Hey everybody, new video here. This will be showcasing the rogue build that I've been using in my recent solo videos and on my live streams. Here are some pros and cons that I have broken down myself. One of the biggest pros to this build is that it has high passive dodge, allowing you to dodge more than half of the bullets shot at you, which just leaves the player to only have to deal with about half of the bullets, which is very manageable. Less likely targeted. Less likely targeted is a hard one to grasp onto. Something like the rogue build is going to have natural, less likely targeting abilities. You pair this with something like optical illusions, you will be less likely targeted half of the time, which once again will be allowing you to not have to deal with more than half of the bullets. This build has very high damage output via max crits and full berserker. This is a build that does not rely on having a joker. What it does have though, instead of passive regen, I've got insta life regen. I think the biggest pro of the perk is that I'm very mobile. I can go all over the place in this build. This build does focus accuracy and stability skills. Now it is on to the cons of the build. One of the biggest downfalls of this build is the grace period attached to your armor break. Also, that grace period not fixing itself until you are fully regened of armor. And that's where bullseye ace comes in hand for us. Also, with the less likely targeting, you will get your teammates shot that are within the same sight lines of the same cop. This is a build that does not have a joker, and jokers are pretty good in death sentence to tank damage and to give extra life. This build only runs 14 first aid kits, is my only way of healing. It is others seen as the amount of mistakes that I can make is about 14. This build does require a bit of a finesse and a very particular style to play. This generally does focus on soul survival. The biggest downfall to this build is that it does require a bit of experience from the player to even be used. The grace period effect in Payday 2 is the act of the 0.3 base death sentence grace period being changed to a 0-0 due to a perk deck ability. This is Payday 2's way of nerfing perk decks without actually having to remove anything from that perk deck. They just add a grace period effect. Something in particular like the rogue, as I just mentioned, is triggered off of your armor break and is only fixed when you have your armor fully regened. Now the debate of this build being, why don't you grab jokers and hostage taker over first aid kit? Let me break it down for you guys real quick. I've been doing infamy with this build, so that means I start at level 0. By the time I get about 50 levels, this is where you gotta make a decision. Do I spend 28 points into hostage taker, taking half my points away for one ability? Or do I spend 12 points into first aid kits and then be able to spread my points a little more into different abilities? The passive life regen that hostage taker offers to me is not enough to sustain this aggressive style of build. This build plays a little more aggressive, that's why the first aid kits are placed in here. And I'm referring to my other rogue build, the one that does bring a joker and the one that does have hostage taker. This one plays a bit more aggressive than that one. Now don't get me wrong guys, hostage taker is the better form of heal. It's an infinite heal, passively happens every 5 seconds as long as you've got a joker. First aid kits run out. It's the biggest, thing that you gotta pay attention to. Now, why did I put berserker in a life-based perk deck? 30 HP as I kind of overpassed. That puts me in a very strong berserker, and since the damage value in death sentence is 225, that's why we're playing around that 225 value right here. So if they're guaranteed going to put me at a 5 HP, which is guaranteed to give me a 95% berserker every single time, that's a strong build. It's a guaranteed 95 berserker every time that I get hit by 225 damage. Now the biggest downfall of this build is the first aid kits. I only have 14, that means I can only make 14 mistakes. As soon as I overpass those 14 mistakes, it's GG. But that's the other thing in this build. If I do run out of first aid kits and I'm left at low HP, I'm not out of the fight. I've got low HP, I've got all that damage output. Still got all the damage output that I need. Just the biggest downfall is you don't get shot another time. Because that's a build that takes 3 shots. With the berserker triggered, it takes 2 shots. It is big brain. That's the same thing in a kingpin build, honestly. Here's an example of the rogue berserker completely annihilating bulldozers, while my teammates are things like anarchist and armorer, full damage builds. Can you tell me how many dozers I killed in the comment section, please? That's rough because he's just better. Yeah, he's gonna run up and stop it. If anyone has made it to this part of the video, I have spent years playing this game, accumulated over 10,000 hours, and the sole purpose of this video is to teach. I've spent my time so that you guys won't have to spend all of your time. Thank you guys for watching. If you did like it, leave a like for me please. Leaving comments is definitely appreciated. I love interacting with you guys. And if you haven't already, maybe sub to me.